Friday, and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord, and today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Don't worry, it's not Skynet. We're not going to help it take over the world. And to talk, I love the eye roll, Frank. I love it. And here to talk with me about AI is Frank Corrigan. We've had him on before to talk about his wonderful technology story, which we will get to here in a little bit. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Frank.
Catherine, good morning. Good to see you as always. I am Frank Corrigan. I am have a good, solid, long background in building and leading teams, particularly in the analytics space. I have loved that leadership aspect, helping my team members do better work, grow their careers, and do it in a way where they feel super good about it, right? They get up in the morning and, right, they don't roll their eyes like, okay, let's go. Let's get out there. And of course, not 100% of the days, but like if you can get the majority of your days like that, that's a great start. So that's my background. And then most recently, I've been building this technology. We dub it voice to writing software, the ability to talk through your ideas, get clarity on your ideas, and do it through voice, and then translate that to writing, because the reality is the world we live in is writing based. There's a lot of other stuff like video, but like a lot of our time.
A lot of writing. Yeah, a lot of writing. And so you are kind of in the AI space at this point, because this technology kind of does its own little, I don't even know how to say it, but basically it kind of just spins on things and it recognizes themes and things like that. So you're kind of in that little realm now. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of what we do uses a lot of the more modern large language models. They became very popular, almost a year ago now, right? So if you think about last October, ChatGPT became a well-known thing. And a lot of that technology in different shapes and forms we are using under the hood to take whatever you say, transcribe that into text, and then basically analyze your text and turn that into more coherent writing than you might be able to put on the paper yourself. But
which is beautiful, right? And it's so inclusive, which is the main thing we want to talk about today, is how AI is part in inclusion and what that means. And to me, the most beautiful part of your technology, I love the techniques of it. I mean, I really do. I think it's fascinating. But the coolest part is why it came to be. And so could you tell us a little bit about that first, so that we can then dive into the conversation from there?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think about inclusion, the first thing that comes to my mind is the ability to listen, right? If you want someone to feel included, right, you got to start with being able to listen and hear them. And then, right, I put myself in those shoes. When I feel heard, I feel included, no matter what the group looks like, no matter what levels the group is at. And I try to do that for others. And I think there's more awareness of that. Will AI, right? So I'm looking at the top of my screen, like, will AI solve inclusion? I don't think it will solve inclusion, but I think it gives us these great tools to become better listeners, to take a step back and think, right? Like we often talk about, we want diverse teams because we want perspectives, we want different backgrounds, we want to pull people in because that makes us a stronger team, makes us better problem solvers. Well, it's not just going to happen, right? Like humans and people actively have to want that. And then I think AI gives us different ways and different tools to make that better. So,
and I like that. I like that you put it. And so I want to kind of take a step back here, because a lot of people, I think, don't quite understand what AI is. I mean, we understand that it's smart and it does some cool stuff on the background, but I think a lot of people don't really understand its purpose, what it can and cannot do. And I think that creates a lot of confusion. So I made the joke about Skynet earlier. And I did love the eye roll. And actually what cracked me up about it is anytime you say that to somebody who actually works in AI, they all do the exact same thing. They're like, we've heard it 5,000 times, we know. and I think, and it is still kind of a funny joke. So we all grew up on Terminator, right? So it's like, we know, or enjoyed it, depending on where you are in life.
Of course.
But a lot of people don't understand that it's us teaching the AI. Like the AI is not alive like how we are, but it is a lot like a child from the standpoint of, it starts with nothing. It starts with an empty slate, and then we teach it from there and what to go with it. So I think kind of the first thing when you talk about wanting to use AI for inclusion, and I completely agree with you. I think that it's going to give us some wonderful tools, and I want to dive into what that looks like a little bit more. But first, how do we create responsible AI that will
Mhm.
do the right things to help with inclusion?
Yeah. So I often allude to this idea of the perfect balance. And I think the perfect balance applies here too, right? So you mentioned, I think it's a good heuristic to start with, like AI or any data model starts out and it knows nothing, right? So you can construct the model, it knows nothing. It needs data and it needs information to start learning patterns that are in whatever information you are feeding it.
Mhm,
Someone has to decide what information it gets fed,
mhm,
right? So there's a judgment call there, and it's usually a person making that judgment call. So all of these models, whether it's like this really modern AI or whether it's a more basic linear regression model, right, that we've had for decades and has been used for decades, it's a human that's making the decisions of how to build and construct that model, what data to feed that model.
mhm,
If you think about a really basic, right, step back and go to linear regression, if you're trying to figure out a super basic relationship between, I think the famous example is um, the more ice cream is sold in the summer, right? So obviously when it's something like when the temperature goes up, more ice cream is sold. So all you have to do is like turn the temperature up and more ice cream gets sold. And there's like a function of the
yeah,
weather patterns there. I don't know if I'm describing that exactly well,
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
but the reality is, like, to build that model, you have to give the model context, and you're making a decision on what data to give it. So, right, you start all the way at that basic. The AI today, what information are we feeding it? It's a lot of the stuff that's written on the internet, and deciding what on the internet you want to train and teach your model with is going to determine how it acts on the output side, right? Like when
Right.
there's millions of people using it. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about guardrails, right? Like, do we want the AI propagating stuff that maybe as a society we're not not really inclined to want it to say? So I come back to the perfect balance, because if you're going to put these really strict guardrails on your AI and limit the language that can come out of them, kind of kills your creativity, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
strictest guardrail, like it's not creative, it's boring, people may not want to use it. And even if they do use it, then everyone regresses to the mean. Everyone says
Right.
the same thing, does the same thing. And when everyone says and does the same thing, like you've
You
reduced
squash
diversity in thought,
diversity.
right? Like what you're trying to
You
promote in
squash
the first
it. No
place.
more. And so it is very important to understand that we're teaching it. And you can set it up as broad as you want. So there was one AI that was basically just told, go learn everything that you can.
Mhm.
And it did. It would just absorb everything, just kind of, and it taught itself like Chinese and stuff. It was fascinating. But and then you have some that are very specific, that it's taught. And so um it is us humans. And so yes, there can be bias inside of it, right? There's also a lot of responsibility. So I think
Mhm.
having one of the things that we need to make sure is happening with AI is that it's people who do believe in integrity and do believe in inclusion that are leading this journey. And I think when hiring into an AI company and to build this type of technology, that should be at the foremost aspect of your hiring is the integrity and the desire to include everybody, which I think should be at the forefront of all hiring, but especially with something like this, right? Like it's especially with something like this. So when you're looking at the possibilities, let's assume that we get the right people in there, right? And
Right.
and they really, and right now, like HR tech AI is embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's just behind the time. It's not even current AI. It's just
Mhm.
terrible, and it's horribly exclusive. So they'll have like resume readers basically that are AI, and they think that that can do what a human mind could do. And I'm going, no, I've debunked that so many times over.
Yeah.
So, but let's say you have the right intentions, right? And people that really do want to do the right thing. Where where do you think, first of all, the line should start and stop when it comes to things like HR or medical things like that, where it can be very you need kind of a human touch.
I am not entirely qualified to answer this question. It's me more philosophizing on what I'm seeing in the world.
Yeah.
I think that if you are using Chat GPT, or you're using Storied, or you're using some kind of large language model writing, the output that it creates for you is a first draft, right? It's always a first draft. And if you are taking the risk where you are using this model, and maybe you're a genius and you set up this pipeline so that you get an email and the model automatically responds to the email and you never check what it says, right?
That's dangerous. Oh, I can see that going south. So
yes. Right. So, the human checkpoints start at model creation. Reinforcement learning with human feedback is a really popular, not popular methodology, but it is one of the techniques that some of these larger companies are using to check that the output that is being created is within some kind of limitations, in some kind of scope. But then there's also checkpoints along the way. So again, these are tools. Like you got to use the tools in the right way, whether it's a hammer or whether it's a language model. You got to have these checkpoints along the way. I think a good checkpoint for now is like, hey, double check that the output you're getting from a large language model fits your parameters. And then a lot of companies are building in these features like a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Right.
You can give feedback to the model or to the company.
Yes.
To
very
say,
simply.
Hey, we should improve this. So, I mean,
yes. And so I like that. I like the checks and balances, right, of double checking and providing feedback. And I do think it's important to understand this is a tool. Think of it like an assistant, right? Like that's kind of how it's been explained to me by folks I know in AI. Like it's very much an assistant. And typically until you get to trust your assistant, when you're dictating, back in the days we all dictated, right? Like to an assistant, before it would go out, you would still read it until you came to trust them and know that it was doing the right thing. So you do need to be staying on top of it, paying attention, making sure that things are being done right. And then that also teaches it, which furthers the process and improves it. And I think that that's what a lot of people are missing, that people think that they can just say, okay, I don't need to do this job anymore because AI is here. Okay, poof, bye. Wait a minute. Let's make sure that the right things are being said, that people are not being excluded, that it's not denying a resume that's perfectly qualified, that type of thing. I think that's kind of the part of the misunderstanding.
And then there's, on top of that, there is this element about how much context do these models have, right? There's a lot of context about our relationship and the relationships we have with the people we work with. And sometimes, right, systems of rules are good, right? Like you can teach a model, hey, these are the rules, execute accordingly. And sometimes there are exceptions, right? Sometimes there's context of a situation where you need to say like, oh, we have to do things a little bit differently here. But you know what? If you don't teach the model that, right, the model's never going to know. So I think having context and helping the models with context that it doesn't have is also a really important consideration.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we're teachers, right? We're kind of parenting this stuff. We're teaching it in the way it should go, so to speak. And it is fascinating. They can do amazing things. And so right now with AI, like especially around inclusion stuff in HR, I think that there's beautiful advancements being made for communication, and including storage. You know how I feel about storage. Huge, huge advocate. I talk about it on all kinds of shows and podcasts now because I think it's amazing. And there's other tools out there too that are astounding. And there are things that are helping folks with ADHD, people that are nonverbal autistic, folks with Tourette's, folks with seizures, everything. There's amazing tools coming from AI and that are extremely wonderful. People with dyslexia are being helped. So I think that it's such a blessing to inclusion because it's going to help people be better understood, and it's going to help people communicate more effectively with one another. And I think that that's really extraordinary and important. And I think it's going to help business a lot too, because how often do we all gotten emails that we're going, what? Like, what is this even saying? And your technology like organizes it and, puts it together. So from that standpoint with inclusion, it's beautiful, right? And it's really elevating and accelerating how quickly we can become an inclusive society. So from that standpoint, I think it's wonderful. But then again, setting those boundaries of understanding,
Sure.
okay, here's the line. Like with the resume thing. Like I tell recruiters, if you want to use AI, use it to help with your messages, use it to help maybe source, like don't exclusively use that because again, it might leave some people out, but you can use it as a tool, right? That's great. But they can't read resumes properly. I'm sorry. I've sat there and messed with AI. It's not a thing that can happen. I've every tool out there they've told me about. I'm like, nope, debunk, 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 debunked. It's just not there yet.
Mm.
And so we have to keep that human interaction and understand the importance of that. And we don't want to replace that. There's all these companies that are like, oh yeah, let's bring in AI and then we don't have to have recruiters and we don't have to have sourcers. And I'm going, oh, so you want to take the humanity out of human resources? That just doesn't seem like a very intelligent process to me at this point. And I'm all for being like machined out of work. I am 100% on board with that. If they invent an AI that can do what a human brain and lets me retire early, cool. I am down for this advancement, but I just don't feel like it's there yet.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of I think it's again back to the responsibility.
Yeah, and as we move forward, as AI gets better, the perfect balance will change each step of the way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As we teach, right, the AIs to get better and better.
Yeah, to get smarter, smarter. So I do want to address the fear because this comes up a lot in my line of work. The fear that AI is working people out of jobs, and I know how I feel about it and what I think and what I tell people. But I'm very curious to know what you think and what your opinions are about positives or negatives on this topic.
So I'll answer the question in a little bit interesting of a way. I think that there is a huge benefit in knowing your skill set, in knowing what you are good at, in knowing where you have opportunity. And I think, and I've always believed that having mentors and having guides and having coaches is really important for that, right? Because it forces you to think through things that, right, like just don't hit your mind. You have blind spots. So having those folks or having something to say or point out those blind spots to you is really powerful. When we think about, right, future of job opportunity, seeing the blind spots, right? Like where you might be, your job might be automated. You might be asked to do something. You might be asked to do your job differently. Like, hey, here's an AI partner. You can use this and you can achieve twice as much in a day as you used to, right? Being able to see that coming, I think, is important. One of the things that Nick, my co-founder, and I talk a lot about are the different levels of understanding. So yes, we are creating a writing tool, but we think that there's 3 levels of understanding: self, shared, and scaled, and they all go up, right? So the first is self. And so understanding, like, what are the stories in your head? How are you seeing the world is really important. And I think that AI, as it gets better, it acts kind of as that sounding board, right? The ability to listen to what you said and then give you a question, or the ability to listen to what you said and said, like, here's one view of how you said that. Here's a different view. Here's an image that represents what you said. Right. The ability to like see your own ideas in different ways is really helpful for that first step.
Yeah.
And the more, like, the people that try to leverage tools to get clearer on that, I think are going to be well positioned for whatever the future of labor market change looks like, whether it's in the next 3 years or the next decade or beyond.
I think it's coming quick, by the way. That's a personal opinion. I think in the next few years, our workforce is going to start looking real different, but in a good way. So, and I want to go ahead and put this out there. I completely agree with what you were saying. I think that, again, learning it's an assistant, basically, right? And kind of the intent right now is to have AI take over kind of the mundane aspects of things so that human beings can use our elevated minds for much more purposeful things and therefore, accelerate humanity. That's kind of the concept behind it. So for instance, there's a technology that's coming soon. And I'm not going to go into too many specifics because I don't know how much has been shared with the public, but basically in a particular field, it's taking away all of the just like boring, data entry and researchy Googlings type stuff. And it's going to take that over, present all of that in a cohesive format to the people who can then go do all the elevated, cool cool kind of work. And so, understanding the purpose, and then also understanding that sometimes certain jobs just become obsolete. I mean, and that's just humanity. That's just what's happened as humanity is furthered. And especially once the Industrial Revolution and all that like started taking over,
Mhm.
and then we furthered even more, and technology really started booming, jobs just go away. That is what happens. Certain jobs will go away. So again, kind of to your point, like start learning the technologies, learning how to use them, find new skills. Always have multiple things that because you're a human, you have so much going on inside of you. And the cool thing when it comes to inclusion for me with this is that I think this is going to start building a world that embraces people who think differently and process differently and with different backgrounds and with different intellectual experiences, because I think we're going to start seeing a lot more jobs that are heavily, which we've already started seeing, that are heavily focused on intellect and on
Mm.
creativity, and a lot less on the like, for lack of a better term, like grunt work, the churning out of things, just kind of mechanical type work. I think that's going to go away, and we're going to shift a lot more into just embracing the human mind and creativity.
Well, I can't say I disagree with you because I fully agree. And right when the work we're doing at Storied is trying to bring that to life, the group that we've been working with most closely are dyslexic leaders.
Mhm.
So dyslexics, a lot of the time when I think the majority of people know dyslexia as like a reading and writing challenge. What
Mhm.
they don't know is that there's the way that these people think. They're awesome at spatial reasoning, right? So they can visualize, and they have this visual thinking aspect. They can see these interconnected patterns that like a linear thinker like me, right, misses the first few times. And right, they're great. The list goes on, but there's these advantages and these things that we right, my co-founder Nick and I, we admire and we want to bring out, we think has been really lost in the workforce, right?
Right.
So tying this into inclusion, like how do we harness those strengths and get those back into the workforce? You'll see that a lot of dyslexics end up as entrepreneurs because they get
Oh
frustrated
yes.
with more of the mundane process oriented tasks of a bigger company.
Yes.
So like, you know what, I'm going to go solve my own problem my own
Yeah,
way.
I got it. Just
And
never
they
mind.
end up, not only are they entrepreneurs, but they end up being successful entrepreneurs, right? Go look up a list of right
Oh, there's
famous
tons of them.
dyslexic through
There's
history,
endless.
starting with
Yeah.
Steve Jobs and Richard Branson on the top.
Hmm.
So I think right that's a group that we are trying to work with very closely because they can speak and they can talk and their ideas are here, 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 and they go in many different directions. But if you can wrangle that and help them wrangle that and put that into a linear written form, right? Like
Yeah.
that allows them not only the self-understanding component, but then they can explain it to other people, that shared understanding, and
Yes.
hopefully the scale, right? Like you have to explain it to your organization or
Yes.
your company, right? Like you
Yeah,
want to align them
100%.
to it.
Yeah. And I think that's again like that's so powerful to realize that we're giving people now tools that can help them. It's an accommodation, right? In the most beautiful sense that there is, and helping people to connect to other humans, right? And that's, I think, something that a lot of people are missing, that this AI stuff is actually allowing, is better connection. Because some of
Mm,
these technologies, even Chat GPT, it's helping you to find different types of knowledge, to communicate your thoughts in a different, more elaborate way. Yours does well, not your thoughts. That's a way to find ideas. Yours actually takes your own personal thoughts and helps
right.
format and find themes. And it's so it's such a beautiful way to connect and to elevate humanity, which to me is a huge part of inclusion. It's not just about making sure that individuals feel belonging and all, which is all very, very important. And that individuals are part of things, but the unity of humanity and connecting that. And to me, that's the most exciting part of all this, is that that's happening now at a larger scale, and it's going to allow that to start happening more and more and more. So these people that historically, and you know how I am about neurodiversity, I eat, live, and breathe it,
Yeah.
love every second of it. It's my jam. Ultimately, it really is. It's this historically neglected, for lack of a better term, people that have just kind of been thrown to the side because people couldn't understand them. And I don't think it's just ignorance. I don't think it's just hate. I think they legitimately could not understand them. And so now being able to connect, and how much further are we going to go as humans when we can all, communicate with each other? I think it's going to be wonderful. And I
Yeah.
think, helping people learn in better ways, people that have been left behind in school won't be anymore. And there's already so much work towards that. And so again, from that standpoint, I think this is one of the most beautiful parts of AI, is the part that brings us all together.
The one of the people I admire is this guy, Shane Parrish, founder of Farnham Street, all about model thinking and mental models. And I heard him on a podcast the other day talk about his belief in equal opportunity, not necessarily equal outcome. And I think that all of these different AI tools, right? We've been talking about equal opportunity for a long time.
Long time. Yeah.
I'm not, I'll say for a long time. And there's this out right now, AI can start to create these more personalized tools for all kinds of really micro groups of people, maybe even all the way down to the individual. So I think it starts to bring that concept to life more than it ever has before.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that there's just infinite potential here. And yeah, I can see that it can be a little overwhelming sometimes, especially if you haven't been around it yet. So first of all, I want to encourage everybody, go be around some AI. It's cool. And there's some cool stuff out there that you can start interacting with, including Story. To go to bstory.ai. There's your plug. And you can go check out their tool. It's extraordinary. I've turned some people onto it and already gotten emails going, "Oh my God, I love this thing. This is so amazing." It really, and there's other ones out there too that are just remarkable. And so start connecting with it, interacting with it, understanding it, because it's going to make our lives beautiful. And we are the parents of it, all of us. Even when you're on Facebook and you're teaching the algorithm, well, guess what? Facebook hasn't touched their own algorithms in 7 years. So you are teaching it what to do and what to send and all of these types of things. So keep interacting with it, keep learning from it. And I think embrace it, run towards it. I think it's the future, and I think it's going to be really exciting. What are your final thoughts for us?
I'm going to echo you there. So I've been using this stuff for it's almost going on years now. And there is a bit of delight, especially these modern AI tools. There are opportunities where it surprises you, where it says these almost funny things. You're like, whoa, I didn't expect that. So you get the delight of surprise in using these tools. And there's also the side benefit where it makes you more productive, or it gives you more time, or it makes you happier or more organized. So it's not just a productivity tool, but these things, image generators, right? That's another one. We're starting to put images into the Story platform. It comes up with these images, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. That's exactly how I feel when I'm trying to describe the problem. So there's a bit of delight in there. No reason to be scared. Go explore.
Yeah, and AI will nerd out with you, which is so fun. So I had a conversation with an AI tool not long ago, and we talked about Batman, because I'm a huge Batman nerd, and we got on this whole Bane discussion and all this kind of stuff. It was fantastic. It was just so delightful. And I was I reverted to this giddy little child, because I was having so much fun with this thing. And so it really does bring delight. It really does. It can give you perspective, like you said. I think it's so freaking cool. So thank you so much for talking to me about this. I think that for mental health inclusion, as you said, because it's going to cause a lot less stress, because how stressed we get just being bogged down with stuff, right? So it'll help there. It'll help people not to feel so lonely sometimes. It will help people to connect by helping people to connect. And then it will also be our assistants and our helpers. So I think run towards it. I think it's going to be beautiful for inclusion. I really do. And so my new format on the show is that I end with 2 different questions, one kind of relating to the topic and one not at all. So good luck with that. So the first one is, in your happiest, nerdiest mind, what is the ultimate cool thing that AI could eventually do?
Oh man, my answer is probably not that ambitious, but the first thing that pops to mind is I would love to find the AI that has an amazing voice, right? Clear voice, understands the context of the goals I'm trying to achieve, whether it's to be a better dad, husband, whether it's to build story, whether it's to run a fast time. And it can interact with me on a day-to-day basis to say like, hey, let's think about your goals in a different way. And I could hear the voice and interact with it. To me, that's getting closer.
I like that.
I have to throw this in at the same time. I was listening to Mark Zuckerberg on the Lex Friedman show yesterday, and it was the first interview in the metaverse. I recommend people go listen to it.
I love fascinating. I'm so nerdy about the metaverse. I'm so obsessed with it. Oh my God, I can't tell you. There's a whole thing I'm trying to get going with that, but that's a whole other conversation. but yes, everybody highly encourage that. So my last question for you is actually a very simple one. There's a congratulations owed to somebody in your family, and I want to just say that I think it's amazing. So go ahead and give a shout out if you would like to said person for the final wrap up in the show.
Awesome. My wife, Jess, has been in the Air National Guard for 13 years now. At the end of this week, she will be promoted. She will now be a lieutenant in the Air National Guard. And it has been a lot of hard work. Nose to the grindstone. So my kids and I will be driving up to see her commissioning. Which is so amazing. I just love that. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for joining me, Frank. It's been a remarkable journey as always. Find Frank on LinkedIn, bestoried.ai. Anywhere else that they can connect with you? Those are the best places. LinkedIn, bestoried, bestoried.ai. Thank you so much again. You were wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Same time, same place next week. Be great. Bye.